Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director at the Office of National Fellowships. Obviously, we're here to talk about the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, specifically for the academic and research opportunities. Before we get into that, I have a couple colleagues of mine. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into it.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Garcia-Glockner. I'm the Assistant Director for O&F.
Hello, I am Keith McCall. I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards. Hey, Gabriel. Hey, Gabby. We have met already. And Laurel, I just responded to your email. Glad you all are here.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like we have a couple of, future OGFA students in attendance, but whether you're working for OGFA or ONF, we all collaboratively work together on these Fulbright fellowships. And throughout the application cycle, we'll talk about this a little bit more. We really try to, you'll be working with your advisor mostly, but we also in the past have done swaps with different advisors or peer workshops, but we really try to get as many eyes on your application as possible because Fulbright is one of the more intensive and rigorous fellowship applications that we work with, which is why we are talking with you today on January 23rd, or whatever today is, for an award that's not due until, our campus deadline is August 23rd. That is very intentional. And so we'll be going over the history of Fulbright briefly, specifics for the academic grant applications, what that entails, going over every component of the application, as well as what makes a competitive application, not just for our campus review process, but for the national review process as well. We'll be going over our internal deadlines that we have. Goes well beyond just the national deadline that you will see on Fulbright's website, how our offices can support you. And then if you have questions throughout the presentation, please just type them into the chat so we can address them as we go, but we'll also have time at the very end. And if you haven't been on Fulbright's website yet, I usually try to save at least like 5 or 10 minutes at the end of this presentation to go onto the website. So if you'd like to hang out there, I can show you briefly how to navigate it because it is rather dense. I'm not going to get into and read all of this to you. The reason that this is still in here in this presentation is because the mission that Fulbright was founded with is still its current mission. In as many ways as possible, we need to flesh out how your project, whether that is a research project, whether that is a graduate degree that you're pursuing, whatever that may be, how that furthers this mutual peace and understanding between the United States and the country that you are going to. And so that needs to be at the forefront of your application, like I said, in as many ways as possible to make sure that this is clear that whatever it is that you are pursuing is mutually beneficial to both parties. So this is funded by the U.S. State Department. It's Fulbright's from country to country, covers so many different academic disciplines. In most cases, whatever your academic background is will be fine for the country that you are applying to. They will on the page, and again later when we go into the website, if there are fields that are not preferred or are excluded from applying to a specific country, they will list that very clearly. Otherwise, what you'll see on most pages is they give a very broad background for the type of student they are looking for, just someone that is flexible, mature, able to engage across culture relative to their field of study. And we already kind of talked about this needs to have, your project needs to be uniquely tied to the country that you're applying to and mutually beneficial. For your eligibility, you do need to be a U.S. citizen, and you need to have your bachelor's degree by the start of your Fulbright fellowship. So it's important to mention that this application cycle is for the 2024-2025 Fulbright year. And so your application is due in August of 2023, which is almost a full year ahead in most cases of when you would start, sometimes a full year and a half, because there are countries that begin in spring or in February of 2025. So yes, Fulbright is going to be your life for the next 12-ish, 18 months, and it depends on if you receive the fellowship, but we are going to be eating, sleeping, and breathing Fulbright for a very long time. With that being said, if you're an undergraduate student, the earliest you can apply is that summer before your final year. If you're a graduate student, if you're pursuing a master's degree, hopefully this would be this spring semester is the end of your first year. I think that would be the ideal time to apply. Or if this is the end of your second year, that is fine too. If you're a doctoral student, usually most will apply once they finish their coursework at Florida State and are then transitioning into that dissertation phase. So just make sure that you sit down, talk to your advisor, and see when is the best time for you to apply to this opportunity. When it comes to language requirements, I feel like it's an even split between countries. Most, maybe about like 55–60% don't require any background in the host country language. But then every other country is going to, like, for example, any Spanish speaking country is going to require at least intermediate to advanced level or proficiency in Spanish. But there are a lot of countries in Central and Eastern Europe, some parts of Africa, some parts of East or Southeast Asia that don't require any background in the language. So it is wholly dependent on your project. We'll dig into that a little bit more later. And you do need to be in good health. Obviously, that's something we can talk in a one-on-one meeting, but what Fulbright wants to know is, well before you travel to this country, Fulbright wants to know that if you need accommodations, they want to know about it so they can provide it. This is not like you're going to, take an exam, and then if you fail that, there's no possibility of being able to do your Fulbright. Just be upfront and honest with them about any medication that you may need, or any other support. So Fulbright, like I said, can provide that upfront. So Fulbright, it does cover the extent of your time abroad. They will pay for you to get there. They'll pay for you to get back. They're going to pay for your cost of living. Sometimes that looks like an apartment. Sometimes that looks like a homestay with a family. It really just depends on how remote your placement is, or if you are living in a city, they will support you and help you find an apartment. In some cases, you may be living with other Fulbrighters, or in other cases, you'll be living by yourself. You do receive a monthly stipend, and that varies by country. And so you're not going to be living in the lap of luxury, but you're not going to be going without. And this looks different. So there's no single monetary amount like this is what a Fulbright is worth. Because obviously, if you're applying for a graduate degree in the United Kingdom, that's going to look far different than if you're applying for a research project in Peru. But like I said, they will take care of you. Now, Fulbright exists in over 160 different countries. Now, no two Fulbrights are the same. And so if we're talking about an academic grant to Peru, an academic grant to the United Kingdom, an academic grant to Germany, an academic grant to Kenya, all of those are going to have different caveats. There's going to be plenty of similarities, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. But when you are going through Fulbright's website, you need to be extremely meticulous in reviewing every line of that page for that country to make sure that your application fits what that country is looking for. And in some cases that you are meeting the special requirements for that country to make sure that everything in your application is good to go. But for an academic grant, anywhere from 8 to 12 months, varies by country. And when it comes to these academic grants, like, it is a spectrum for the students that we work with. Some students are purely pursuing a one-year master's degree, and it's just that, it is a master's degree. That is my Fulbright. Other students are pursuing a research project. That is, you will not be earning a degree by the end of that research. I'm just conducting research. And then there are projects in the middle where I am earning a graduate degree, and research or some thesis component is a part of my project. And I'll show you again later on the website where to make that discernment, because there are some countries that will just list Open Study Research Award, but then it'll say, we do not accept research projects. We only accept graduate degree applications, or the inverse, or both. And so we just want to make sure, again, that you're applying to the best country for you. And now this slide and the next is just highlighting a few students that I've worked with in the past who I think really exemplify what we are looking for when it comes to a Fulbright application, but I also think have really unique circumstances that I feel are worth noting. And so specifically for Eli, and this goes into or connects to applying to a country where the project is mutually beneficial. And so Eli's background and the research that he had done at Florida State through IDEA grants, through other funded opportunities for many years, was working in coral reef restoration. Had his diving certificate, or I guess license, I don't know what it's called, please forgive me. So he was certified, had extensive logged hours underwater. So he had the qualifications to do this research, which is again what Fulbright is looking for. Based on your proposal, do you have the experience in the background to be successful in that endeavor? And so, and when we were planning his application, he was between a few different countries, but ultimately settled on the Philippines because obviously his focus was on coral reefs, on the coast, on healthy marine life, and getting community engagement in preserving these areas. And so the Philippines was apt for many reasons. And when he initially reached out, and so every applicant for the academic awards will need an affiliation letter to some degree. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but as Eli was looking for that affiliation letter, he reached out to one specific research institute in the Philippines, sent a couple emails back and forth, and eventually they settled on, we love your research topic, we love your research idea. However, we have this project that has already been going on for over a decade, and we would love to bring you into the fold, have you join this project. And then from there, they were able to kind of flesh out the specific role that he would have. So his idea began as something that was, this is what I'm doing at Florida State, this is my idea, and settled somewhere in between what the Philippines was already doing. So I say that because you don't have to come up with an entirely novel idea for a Fulbright project. If you have, that's excellent, but make sure that you're communicating with your in-country affiliates to settle on what that project ultimately looks like, and then ultimately for Eli that led to that affiliation letter. I also bring up Eli because, and I say this for every Fulbrighter that I work with, whether you're applying for an academic grant or an English teaching assistantship, and I promise this is not me being pessimistic, but I tell everyone, okay, so after Fulbright is done, we forget that Fulbright ever happened, and it's like, well, let's look at our plan B, plan C. What is your contingency plan? And that is because Fulbright is an extremely competitive opportunity. And while I felt very confident about Eli's application, you never know what is going to happen. And so, so Eli did have a few contingency plans. Obviously, if you look at the date of when he received his offer, we did not know a global pandemic was about to descend upon us. And so the Fulbright ended up getting postponed. And it took a couple years before Eli was finally able to decide whether he wanted to pursue this opportunity or not. Luckily, he still had a backup plan in Honduras, where he had done research previously. And so he went over there to continue that research until Fulbright was a possibility, but ultimately ended up declining the Fulbright to take now a position with, I believe, Florida Fish and Wildlife that is doing the work that he wants to do. And so while he was offered the Fulbright, life happened, but luckily, just to re-emphasize, he had multiple backup plans because, situations are what they are. So fantastic applicant, but just to re-emphasize, it is not always about Fulbright. You can find other means and other outlets to do the research that you're wanting to do. Charles, we worked together on a few different fellowships towards the end of his collegiate career. And then we were working on a master's in public health program in the United Kingdom. And so the United Kingdom is often framed as like one of the more difficult countries to apply to, because the way their Fulbrights are structured is that they are partnership awards. And so it is, I'm pursuing this master's degree at this university, and they have about a list of 40 to 50 different universities that are partner institutions. So for those Fulbright applicants, you're not just answering, why do I need to go to the United Kingdom, but why do I need to be studying at this particular university in this city in the United Kingdom? And so it becomes very specific and complex. And again, to reemphasize, I thought Charles's application was pretty stellar. He applied to a university that has one award for anywhere from 40 to 50 applicants on an average year. He moved into the semifinalist round, meaning he was one of the remaining 4 or 5 students being considered, and ultimately did not receive the offer. However, by working on his Fulbright application for many months, we were able to take those essays, take those materials, take those recommendation letters, and he used that, he used that to apply to graduate degree programs in the United States, and ultimately was accepted into a master's in public health at the University of South Florida that he has since finished, and is now working for the Department of Health in Florida, if I remember correctly. And so again, point being is we are going to support you in the best ways that we can to make sure that this Fulbright happens for you. But even if it doesn't, make sure that you're talking to your advisor about other fellowships, other opportunities that may be relevant to you in your studies, to make sure that your future success or your future plans is not wholly contingent upon Fulbright. Now, the application checklist, we'll go through all of these individual components. And of course, if you have any questions at this point, please type it into the chat and I will pause briefly. So the application portal should be open. And so if you want to go online and make sure that the website you are going to is us.fulbrightonline.org. You are not applying for a faculty Fulbright. Every year, there's always like 1 or 2 students that accidentally creates an account on the wrong website. So make sure it's the correct one. And that will allow you to just go in, look at all of the different components that you're going to need to submit. The online application itself is extremely lengthy. And so it's a very deconstructed resume. So you're wanting to make sure that you're inputting all of this information gradually over the course of the application process. But the major components that you'll be working with either Keith, Bonnie, or myself on is going to be this statement of grant purpose and personal statement. And so for any academic grant, you have 2 pages, single space, to write your statement of grant purpose, 1 page, single space for your personal statement. Obviously, I recommend going online and taking a look at the prompts for these different essays. And then I encourage you to take a step back and think about those prompts holistically, because if you answer these prompts, and this is from years of experience of working on these, if you answer the prompt literally, yes, the review committee will have the information that they need, but what that creates is an extremely dry application. And so for the statement of grant purpose, usually how I recommend students navigate it is, and there are many right ways to do this, of course, but is to find initially in that beginning, maybe first paragraph or 2, reasons for why you need to be in this country. So maybe that's rooted in current events, maybe that's rooted in very specific data that you can pull, maybe that's rooted in anecdotal experience that you think is extremely relevant, but give me some reason that grounds you in this country that you're applying to before we then segue into the specifics of your project, where you'll spend about a full page detailing, okay, so who are you researching alongside? Well, what are the methods that you're implementing in this project? Who are the community partners that you're working with? Again, and if you're applying for an academic grant, like for a graduate degree, what are the most relevant courses that you're taking? Who is the faculty that you're working under? Again, if there's a thesis component, tell me about that. So you need to be as specific and detailed as possible about the nature of your research or your project and the timeline associated with that. And then usually in the final quarter or third of your second page, we need to then incorporate, okay, what additional community engagement opportunity are you getting involved in? Or maybe what is the significance of this project long-term? Something, again, that maybe re-emphasizes that mutual peace and understanding between the United States and the country that you're going to make sure that your statement of grant purpose falls in line with Fulbright's mission. If all of that makes sense. Now, the personal statement, I will tell my students, while you have a full page, you do not have a full page to explain your story. Usually you have about maybe a good solid half page to give me that relevant example from your time in college, before college, whatever anecdote you're wanting to share. And then we need to get to the point. And the point being is, why Fulbright? So why did you share this story with me? How does this maybe highlight your skill set, your experience, your perspective? That's going to make you this effective cultural ambassador abroad. So again, everything from your statement of grant purpose to your personal statement to your rec letters, affiliation, it all needs to connect back to why Fulbright, why this country, why this research project. The language evaluation, again, if the language is required, so the wording they'll use is either like recommended or required, intermediate, advanced, beginner, proficiency, whatever that may be. And so, for example, if you're applying to anywhere, like I already said, any Spanish-speaking country, you're going to need at least intermediate proficiency. We will find or can help connect you to faculty at Florida State in that department that can evaluate you on your listening, your reading, your speaking. But it's also important to mention that, say, if the requirement for my country, say I'm applying to a project in Argentina, it requires intermediate proficiency, but the nature of my project, the research that I'm doing, say that incorporates many interviews, that I'm having with this local community. And I need to translate and decode all of these interviews. And my project really necessitates an advanced proficiency in the language. You need to either, in your language evaluation, show that you have that above average, that advanced proficiency, or you need to perhaps get an affiliation letter from a translator in country or a faculty member in country that is going to support you in that project. So know what your project necessitates and make sure that somewhere in your application, you're able to highlight that you have that support or that added proficiency. The affiliation letters, or actually, sorry, I skipped ahead. The letters of recommendation, obviously, if you're applying for an academic grant, academic letters are the most valuable. Ideally from people in your field that have seen you conduct research, perform well in your coursework. Secondary to that would be a letter that can speak to your leadership, your character, your ability to engage across these differences. But I would say for an academic Fulbright, ideally, we want to see all 3 letters come from faculty, but at the very least, we want to see at least 2 of those letters come from faculty. And if you're a graduate student, it's absolutely fine if that letter comes from your undergraduate institution, if that's someone you've maintained a relationship with and can still speak to the work that you're doing. Now, the affiliation letters, you can submit anywhere from 1 to 3 letters. 1 is the requirement. And that's good. Again, it's going to look different in every country. For example, if you're applying to the United Kingdom, your affiliation letter technically is your acceptance into the university. You do not need to submit anything beyond that. However, my advice is that you should be taking this semester to be reaching out to that institution or to faculty you would like to be working with, establish connections, which at the very least may help you be more detailed in your essay, and at very best, can result in an additional affiliation letter beyond just your acceptance into the university. Now, for most other countries, your affiliation letter needs to come from an academic in that country, ideally from a university in the city or area where you are going to be doing your work. And if you just get that 1 letter, you just show that academic support, you're technically good to go. But again, like I was saying, for the language evaluation, if you know the nature of your research and your project necessitates more community engagement from other partners or actors in this project, I don't just need the academic affiliation. I need to make sure that this organization, this nonprofit or whatever it is going to allow me to work with the people they are serving, or the materials, the documents that I need are all all housed at this very specific library, and I need an affiliation letter to ensure that I have access to these documents. Again, whatever that is, you need to be reaching out to these institutions early to get those contacts. Like if you are, for example, I always use France as an example, because every year we have students that are wanting to apply to academic grants in France, and they wait until the summer to start making contact. And that country takes holiday very seriously. I wish this country did, but they will not respond to your emails until maybe September if you're lucky. And so if you're not starting now, you will be behind. And this is not to scare anyone. I just really want you to know that this application takes months of preparation before you start writing to ease the stress of the application cycle. Official transcripts from every institution that you attended. You do not need that for our campus deadline, so don't pay for that if you don't have the money for it at that time. And you may even be able to, if I recall, submit unofficial transcripts for the national deadline. You only need to submit official if you are awarded the Fulbright in the spring term. So don't pay money unless they're like offering you money, is I guess the way I would look at that. And then passport. I mean, that seems very obvious, but you would be surprised every year there's some students that will remember very late. I never applied for this. You can apply for it through international programs at FSU, and they usually get you through that process a little bit quicker than if you just apply on your own. And I think like years ago when I applied for mine, I think it was actually a little bit cheaper to do so through Florida State. But again, be ahead of the curve there. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. So again, any questions about that, please unmute or type in the chat.
Online application, they can make an account right now.
Okay. Was that a question, or is that just?
I'm telling
Okay.
you.
Okay, cool. Did everyone hear that? Should we say?
I'm not sure.
You want to just repeat?
Just a heads up that right now.
Just a heads up that right now you can go into the Fulbright website and make an account, but the actual application will not go live until April. So.
Cool, good to know. Okay, so what is going to help your application stand out for both and we'll get into our internal process a little bit later, but also at the national level, because oftentimes these applicants, or these applications, I should say, are split into stacks of anywhere from 50 to 70 applications that is read and reviewed by 3 to 4 academics. And so it's kind of easy to get lost in the sauce, for lack of a more academic term. And so obviously the commitment to that Fulbright mission, and as many ways as possible for you to be able to highlight why your project needs to be in this country and nowhere else. And so if I can control F and find every time you say Italy in your project, then I can replace it with Portugal, and it's the same project that is not a strong application for Fulbright. So again, as many ways as possible, make it unique to the country that you are applying to. Limited in-country experience is rarely an issue. When this does become an issue, it's usually I'm a graduate student. I've been in the country for 12 to 14 months already, and I'm applying to a Fulbright just to extend my stay. That may opt you out of being eligible. If you grew up in the country that you're applying to, but have lived in the United States for anywhere, a few years, 5 years, 10 years, that you should still be fine as long as there's that separation. In that instance, the only thing that would concern me is some countries may not allow you to apply if you hold dual citizenship. Some countries do, but that's something to be aware of. If you have been to the country once, multiple times, but not for that like consecutive 8 to 12 month time frame, then you should be fine. Again, talk to your advisor if that's something that concerns you, but rarely has it impacted anyone that we've worked with. I already emphasized the language proficiency plan. You need to show that you have that proficiency, or in some cases, it's okay to show that I plan to kind of pick this up or take this study more seriously in country. But again, it depends on your project. If there is one word that you take from this presentation, it is the word feasible. Fulbright wants to know that, okay, if you only have 8 months to do this project, we need to know that the scope of your project or the scope of your research, everything can be completed in that time frame. So again, show that you have the affiliates, be able to show that you have the skill set, maybe through your letters of recommendation. People can speak to how hard you work or how much, how much time you have spent with this research over the years, but make sure that you can convince a Fulbright committee that I will gather everything that I need in the time that I have. Or, if you're applying for a graduate degree, that I am going to finish this degree, because there are programs that are multiple years. Fulbright funding lasts for 1 year. And so Fulbright is not just going to give you funding to go finish the first year of a master's degree and be like, all right, funding ran out, I'm out. So you need to show them that you're capable of finishing this project. And the last little bit, essays with ARC, we need you to be authentic, relevant, compelling. If you're missing any one of those components, it's the committee will notice. They'll notice if you're not being yourself in this, if you're just kind of tailoring this to the audience you think is reading it. Again, relevancy, like we need to show, sometimes projects are very urgent. And we've had students in the past that have talked about documents they need to study that are only being housed in a museum in this country for this specific time frame. Obviously, you don't need that to be compelling. That was a unique case, but you need to show that I need to be doing this research now. And this is a hot topic maybe within society or within my field. But again, just show that your project is current, is relevant, and it's necessary for the academic and professional goals that you have for yourself. So, like I said, this is a very long application process. And so my advice for the spring semester, you do not need to be started, you'd be writing your essays, crafting all of that just yet. Be spending the next few months narrowing down the countries that maybe are eligible for your type of research. Be looking at specific universities that you need to be partnering with, or who may be some community partners. Talk to your faculty, be making those connections now, because you don't need to technically submit first full drafts of your application until June 1st. By that point, that is what and we will share all of this information with you. Like if you've registered for this presentation, we're going to let you know what these deadlines are. We'll send you those checklists, those links, everything that you need. So don't worry about that. But by June 1st, we need to know that you have taken a serious step forward in your application, because all of June, all of July, and most of August is when you're meeting likely with your advisor weekly or every 2 weeks, depending on how far ahead you maybe are in that application process, to review and edit your essays, to check in about all of these other components that you need to complete, and to make sure that by August 23rd, which is that next bullet point, you have a full and complete application. You should, in my opinion, completely ignore that October deadline, because your deadline is the end of August. And the reason why is that we take all of our applications, from our ETAs to our academic awards to everyone, and we schedule you usually in the first 2 weeks of September for a 20-minute interview with time at the end for questions, with our campus faculty committee, who will ask you questions about the feasibility of your project, ask you questions about your maturity or ability to take on this project. Or in some cases, it's a nice conversation about, this is what we loved about your application and what you can do better. Sometimes those interviews they take on a little bit of a spectrum where they are very much intensive interviews, or just a nice casual 20-minute conversation. Really depends on the faculty that you will be interviewing with. But regardless, you will get feedback on your application that you will then have about a week or so to implement that feedback and resubmit by, we will give you a specific date, but it's usually that last week of September or October 1st, somewhere around that time. It really depends on when Fulbright's deadline is, which has not been confirmed. But the benefit of going through this campus review process is not just the feedback you get from the committee, is one of those committee members will sit down and write a CCE form or a campus committee evaluation form that endorses your application. It's like the university's formal endorsement, where they will talk about when I think these letters are done very well, they will talk about items in your application. Maybe they'll re-emphasize the skills or your personality or your ability to take on this project, why you're such a good fit for this award, or they'll re-emphasize the goals that you have and why you're such an ideal candidate for Fulbright. But regardless, it's another layer to your application that a review committee will see and will take note of. And also why we have that deadline well before October, usually 5th or 10th or whatever it ends up being, is because then we, mostly Bonnie, will have to attach all of these CCE forms, usually anywhere between 50 to 70 of them, to every individual application and go through them one by one to make sure every component is complete. So again, October is our deadline, August is your deadline. Once that is complete, your applications are going to be sent to the National Screening Committee. And so between November and December, these will be read and reviewed and discussed. And then if you are notified as a semifinalist, that will happen in some rare instances at the end of December, but in most cases by the end of January, you will receive a notification that is, thank you for applying, please apply again next year, or congratulations, you've been selected as a semifinalist, continue waiting, or congratulations, you've been accepted as a semifinalist, here is your interview time. And I will let you know, they are very rigid about those interview times. We have had students that have interviewed at 3 a.m. because in, oh my gosh, where was that? Romania, wherever it was, like, that is the time that you will interview. And so they will be very explicit. I should also mention that please remember the email you use when you sign up for your application. That is the email they will contact. There have been instances where I've seen a student's status, whether it's a semifinalist or a recipient, and I've waited a week to 2 weeks to reach out because I wanted to, give them time to celebrate before I congratulate them personally. And then I had one student where I emailed them 2 weeks later and they were sitting in the middle of class and did not check their email. They had no idea that they had received this fellowship. Please don't let that be you. So please know the email that you use. But if you are notified as that semifinalist, okay, then your application is then moved on to the host country for that final review. That usually happens around February. And you will hear usually around March or April, if you are a non-select, an alternate, or a recipient of the award. And then, of course, that award will begin usually fall of the following year, or I guess by that point of that year, so fall of 24, or spring of 25, depending on the country that you applied to. So again, you are applying to this award a full year in advance of when you are going to begin that award. So it's just important to know that timeline. And then when it comes to ONF and OGFA, obviously we have served as a sounding board for your project to make sure that it's something that would be received well by Fulbright, is mutually beneficial to both the US and the country that you're applying to. And so we can help hammer out these ideas with you, but mostly because I would, in some cases, in most cases, defer to you, to your faculty, to your PI to go over those items with you. But we're here to manage the essays, the recommendation letters, the transcripts, the affiliation letters, the language evaluations, the application itself, which we didn't really talk about, but does have its own short essays that we need to consider. But regardless, we're here to help you maintain all of those components and stay on track to make sure that you're meeting our campus deadlines. And like I already said, you will be meeting with your advisor predominantly to go over these essays, but we do host peer writing workshops. Bonnie, myself, and Keith, if we feel like we're at a standstill with an application, we'll send you to a different advisor, get another set of eyes on this. And so we really try to make sure that as many people as possible are working on this application with you. I have been working on this fellowship for many years. I have years worth of students that I would love to connect you with, who have obviously come from Florida State. But when we go down to the website later, I will show you where else, if there's an alumni from Florida State who maybe hasn't studied in the country that you're going to, or maybe hasn't done research specifically in your field, I'll show you where you can find Fulbright alumni who would love to talk to you about their experiences. But obviously, you can reach out to Fulbright on your own, but we also have contacts within the organization if you have very country-specific questions that we cannot answer. And that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation before I bring up the website. And so this is all of our contact information, both for OGFA at the top, and then starting at Dr. Filer and below for the Office of National Fellowships. So if you're a graduate student, please reach out to Keith, Dr. Stevenson, or Honorine. If you're an undergraduate, myself or Bonnie would love to work with you. And so if you need to head out, that's technically the end of the presentation. I am happy to answer questions for the next 5 minutes or so. And then if you want to hang out, I will bring up the website and help navigate that with you. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to working with you soon. Please feel free to unmute or just type into the chat, whichever works better.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, so that was really helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Have
talk
a
to
good
you
one
soon.
now.
I will second that motion. I have no questions, but thank you very much.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I'll go ahead and bring up the website. But like I said, if anything pops into your mind, please feel free to let me know. Okay. So this is, make sure, and again, just to reemphasize, that you're on the U.S. Student Programs website for Fulbright and not the faculty website. And so usually when students come into the office for the first time, some students usually fall into one of two camps, most students, I would say, and either they know exactly this is the research project that I'm doing, and this is what it has to be. But maybe that research is pretty flexible as to where it could be conducted and be conducted effectively. The other camp are students that know this is exactly the country or the region or the city that I need to be in, and my work may be a little bit flexible, but I know that it needs to be here. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it may just kind of determine how you search and navigate the website. And so it may seem a little bit obvious, but I think the easiest place to start is just searching through the countries. Like I said, every country is going to have different types of Fulbrights, different numbers of Fulbrights offered. The nature of those awards are going to be a little bit different. And I always use Brazil as an example because I think most countries, what you're going to see is that they're pretty straightforward. They have two categories. They have an ETA, and then they have the open study research, and they're just grouped, lumped together, despite the fact that there's nuances within those awards. But the reason why I bring up Brazil and go over the study research award is because so you get your basic general information up at the top, and then so this award profile and the candidate profile, that varies by country. Some are extremely specific and some are extremely vague. And if it's extremely vague and you can adapt your project, your ideas within that box that they give to you, then by all means, then you should be applying to that country, unless they explicitly say this is not going to work. You'll also see whether, and in this case, this is one of those rare February start dates. So it's a little bit later than most Fulbrights, but something that is important to many students if they're on a specific timeline with their degree program. And then you're going to see regarding eligibility, dual citizens are not eligible, important to note. Foreign language proficiency, intermediate. And this is one of the, I referenced this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but this is really important. So if you are considering graduate degree enrollment, that is not eligible for Brazil. You can only enroll in or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say enroll. You can only pursue independent research. You can partner with the university, but you cannot earn a degree. There are countries where that is inverted, and then there are countries where both of those are yes. So depending on what you want to do, just make sure that your project is eligible for that country. Most will then explain how they define an affiliation letter and what you need to do. 9 times out of 10, you need to partner with an academic institution for your project. I also bring up Brazil because this goes into what I was saying earlier about countries have specific caveats for their awards, things that you need to abide by or that you should at least take note of. And for Brazil, they explicitly state that if your project is within Sao Paulo, Salvador, or Rio de Janeiro, you will be at a competitive disadvantage. They prefer projects outside of those cities. And with that being said, some years ago, I worked with a student that was applying for a creative art poetry project in Brazil. And they were pretty blunt in saying, my project will suffer if I am not in Sao Paulo. The people that I want to work with, the people that I want to engage with are in Sao Paulo. Here is a breakdown of the literal population distribution in this city. Here's a breakdown of the museums and the resources and the university that I want to affiliate with. It is all rooted in this city. And so we knew going into this application that we were going to be taking that risk. But they cited data, numbers, resources, and I guess to put it bluntly, kind of flexed on Fulbright to show them that this is where my project needs to be. And they were ultimately offered the award. But still, if they had not taken that care to ensure that I need to show them why it needs to be in Sao Paulo and nowhere else, they would not have been selected. It would have been much, much harder for them to be selected. And then at the bottom of these pages, you'll also have different websites for either the U.S. Embassy or other contacts in country. Sometimes that can be helpful because going to those links and websites, maybe it will show you what are some initiatives in country that both Brazil and the United States prioritize. And if your if your research or project aligns with that mission, that probably means your application will be read and reviewed very favorably. And then let's also look at, like I mentioned earlier.
Question in the chat.
Oh, yes. Question.
I'm in the online MSW program. Would I be eligible to participate? And if so, how would it integrate with my course of study?
So if you're in an online program affiliated with Florida State, we would still love for you to work with our offices. You can still go through our internal process, and we'd be happy to meet with you virtually if that's most convenient. And what was the second part of that question?
How would I integrate this with my course of study?
So I would speak with your primary advisor because if you're in an online program, I don't know if that timeline is still the same, like it's a 2-year online program, or if it's a little bit more like part-time and the hours are a little bit flexible. And so you want to make sure that hopefully your coursework will conclude by the time that your Fulbright starts. I think that would be most convenient. However, if your program is okay with you taking classes while you are abroad, and you can do that concurrently, and the Fulbright and your coursework are not going to suffer as a result of that, then you may be able to do that. Because to go back to eligibility, you just need your bachelor's to be eligible. After that, you cannot apply to a Fulbright if you have a terminal degree. So you are well within that window of eligibility. Just make sure that you speak with your advisors first to make sure it's okay for you to travel during your program, or if you need to wait until that program concludes. I hope that's helpful.
Yes. Thank you.
And then just to bring it up, just for students who may be watching this later, if not live, when it comes to the United Kingdom, their website is different for academic awards because It is all, so when you saw Brazil, everything was lumped together. This is broken down individually by university. Some of these are very specific to, for example, the one Fulbright to the Royal Veterinary College Award. So if you're not in the veterinarian sciences, I don't even know what to say for that. I would not apply here. There are others that are very specific to the arts, like in music and dance. But in most cases, like this Fulbright University of Birmingham Award, I would assume that is open to all fields of study. Again, as long as you can say why the UK and why Birmingham. Now, other things to consider is, so for example, in Spain, you will have it broken down a little bit differently again. So you will have those open study research awards like you saw in Brazil, where again, sometimes these open study research awards will give you a list of universities that are eligible, or it'll say, you make the case for yourself. You tell us the university, you tell us the degree program, as long as it was within the borders of this country, you are eligible to apply. But then Spain also has these unique partnership programs where it is one master's degree, one Fulbright, one master's degree in these specific fields of study at these specific universities. So as you can see, as we're going through these different countries, an academic Fulbright is broken down and categorized differently. And so you want to make sure that you are making a good short list for yourself, anywhere from 2 to 3 countries maybe at this point that are eligible for you to apply to, before you can really start to figure out what is the best pairing for what you are looking for and what this country is looking for. That's all I have when it comes to at least navigating the different countries. Now, earlier when I was talking about so there are plenty of other resources on this website, from blogs and YouTube videos and other that you can take advantage of. But what I think is most valuable is these alumni ambassadors. And it goes all the way back until 2008. And this is going to be a mixed bag of, oh goodness, alumni ambassadors, let's just say 2022. And so there's no guarantee that one of these students will have done exactly what you're looking to do in the country that you're looking to apply for. However, all of these students from the 2022 class to the 2008 class have agreed. Like, I would love to speak to interested students. You would get a brief bio, you would get their contact information. And I believe they started adding at the bottom, which I think is really great, please reach out to me if you identify in this way. I would love to talk to you about my experience in country, or the resources that I found in country. And then if you, and this has happened despite it being, maybe, I don't want to say unlikely, just because there are so many different types of Fulbrights, but I have had students that have gone through the alumni ambassadors page and they found it nothing really close to either what they were wanting to do or where they were wanting to go. And if that's the case, again, under the alumni tab, you can go to the grantee directory and, well, if it pulls up, and you can search by institution, you can search by country studied in, you can search by a lot of different criteria and find the entire history of Fulbright recipients, I believe back into the 1940s. Granted, some of those people unfortunately may not be with us any longer. So, be discerning whether you're choosing people you want to reach out to. But for example, I had a student a few years ago who was applying for a public health program in Vietnam. And the part of the country they were wanting to study in, they were having a very difficult time hearing back from some of the hospitals they were reaching out to. They're having a difficult time hearing back from some of the faculty they were reaching out to. And so we used this site, and they found, coincidentally, they found public health projects in Vietnam from a few years prior. And so I encouraged the student, I was like, reach out to those people. It requires, an above average ability to maybe creep online, but for most students who have higher tech proficiency than me, that's not an issue. And so this student was able to find these former Fulbrighters, was able to very tactfully reach out to them and be like, hey, I know this is probably weird, I apologize for that, but I'm applying to a Fulbright in Vietnam. I saw that you studied here. Do you have any advice? And this is not that's not the only time this has happened, but in every instance, the person that was reached out to has been more than willing to help and support. Not just so in this particular case for that Vietnam project, and I'm not saying this is going to be every case, but that student, the alumni, was like, yes, here's all of my essays and all my written materials. Here are all the contacts and the names and emails that I used when I was in country. Please let me know if you have difficulty. I would love to reach out to them personally. And I think that's what's really beautiful about the Fulbright community is that it is so supportive and collaborative, that if you can't find what you're looking for, someone is willing to help you. And so don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to reach out. And if you can't find anything, again, Bonnie, myself, Keith, we can reach out to Fulbright on our behalf and find that information or find that contact for you. That's really it. That's all that I have for this presentation. And I know we're basically out of time, but again, thank you so much for attending. And if you do have any additional questions, please feel free to ask before we conclude here today.